You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and we are looking at the matters of the opposition to the Public Universities Bill, University Bill 2020. So let me take just about a minute or two comment from Professor Odro as he takes leave of us, and then I come to Professor Tia and Admakwa to give us the questions of academic freedom that we have to look at to conclude the discussion. Yeah, so Professor Odro, what will be your concluding comment, particularly having heard from the government as represented by Vincent Assafuah, Director of Communications of the Ministry of Education?
Thank you very much, Council. I thank Vincent, the Director of his submission. One question comes up. I agree with Vincent that the Minister of Education must have a say in what happens in the university. But he's suggesting that since 1998, when power was given to councils to take optimum decisions, ministers haven't had a say in the operations of universities. No. Ministers have had a say through the National Council of Tertiary Education. Ministers have had a say through the governing councils. You see, in principle, ministers must intervene when things are not going on well, but they must not interfere. That is what we want to avoid, and that's interference is what the bill seeks to do. Okay. And that compromises the basic principles. Okay. So you belong to the school that this should be rejected outright. Yeah, outright. Okay. I think the challenge we have in governance of our universities is with leadership and extreme politicization of university governance. These are two things that need to be addressed. Thank you very much. Yeah. If we have a minister who acts as a minister, then we can in some way say that academic freedom wouldn't be interfered with. But if you have a minister who acts as a party activist, that is where the danger is. Okay. But in Ghana, as I earlier said, when we talk about government representation, we are talking about political party representation. So, Samson, my recommendation, as I leave is that one, we actually do not need a harmonized act and statute to promote governance and management efficiency in public universities. What we need to address injustices and management inefficiencies in universities is to ensure that people appointed as vice chancellors, registrars are appointed on merit. They are appointed on merit, not on political lines. What we need to ensure is to make the regulatory bodies, NCTE and others, functional without political interference. All right. And what we need to ensure is to ensure that the ministry operates on the basis of intervention, but not on interference. As for the harmonized bill, it is non-starter. It was rejected outright. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor. Professor George K.T. Odro is former Pro-Vice Chancellor and current Dean, School of Educational Development and Outreach, University of Cape Coast. Now, let's go to clause, is it 43 of the Act, of the bill talking about academic freedom. And what are your concerns about academic freedom? You seem to say from the reviews I have read that it will be lost. How so?
Yes, it will be lost, and clearly Mr. Assafuah's intervention expressed that and confirmed that.
What is it, first of all, before we talk about it being lost?
He seems to display a complete ignorance of the university governance system. And the university governance system operates on self-governance and institutional autonomy. And for that to work, the university is given some space which should not be encroached upon. That space is for a specific purpose. It's to promote what we call functional necessity of the university. So academic freedom here is a freedom that has two dimensions to it: freedom from and freedom to. The freedom is for government not to respect the university space, so that if there are certain rights that are there, it shouldn't seek to violate them. The government is also to protect the university against violations by third parties, and if it so happens, to ensure that that space is closed. The government is also has a duty to fulfill some obligations towards the university in terms of provision of infrastructure and so on. And that is where the accountability issue comes in. Now, there are laws, as have already been said, that seeks to regulate this. And one law which we want to mention is the Procurement Act, under which the university falls. So that when we're talking about services, works, and so on, the university has a responsibility to abide by the procedures and standards that are enshrined in the bill or the act, to ensure that we don't we don't violate our procurement rules that we have in the law. Now, academic freedom is to fulfill or to serve a public good. It is not given to the university academic or to the student just for that individual to enjoy. It is to be used to facilitate the realization of a good that will benefit the society as a whole. Now, if you look at clause 43, it talks about academic freedom for the institution and for academics. The one for the institutions, well put in terms of the content of it. The one for academics is not comprehensive. It only talks about the relationship between the university and the academics. And it says that the academic is protected from the enjoyment of the academic freedom by the university. What about the state itself? The state is the major duty bearer for academic freedom. And the state is mostly responsible for violating academic freedom. Now, that aside, all the nice words in the definition of academic freedom for the university and for the academics, it is taken away through the clawback clause that we have identified. The directive that the minister has violates university autonomy. The president's power to declare a state of emergency and to appoint the principal officers of the university. It violates academic freedom. It violates the institutional autonomy of the university. So we're talking about the freedom that academics should have to do research. It is tampered with because it has to go through these irregularities and so on. Appointment by the university council is controlled. Yeah. So in that situation, we don't have academic freedom.
Professor Assafuah suggested earlier whether if this comes in, you may want to stay back and not be as active as you could be. But why? If you have freedoms that are guaranteed by the Constitution already in Article 21, why would you be afraid because of this law? And the Ghana Arts and Science Academy of Arts and Sciences say academic freedom refers to the right that any academic has to research any relevant issues, present ideas and facts from their research to students and to the general public without fear of repression or censorship from their employers or any other person in authority. Such ideas or facts may sometimes be inconvenient for their employers or government, but they need to be protected as much as possible. Most universities around the world provide guidelines on the limitations imposed by common sense. So if this bill seeks to limit it a bit, why the fear?
The fear is extremely justified, because now you are removing the protection that I have as a lecturer and a researcher and giving it to a government, which is political. And political parties come and go. Individuals remain in the institution. Individuals engage in research which can be political. Political in the sense that you are addressing issues that may be uncomfortable, that may be controversial, that may go against a particular party in office. So if I am seeking promotion, I'm not yet tenured, I'm a senior lecturer, I'm applying to be associate professor, and I engage in research that seems to antagonize the government in power, and they have the majority on council, then it is likely that I will have the fear that my promotion will not come to pass, or my promotion will be delayed, because the council is representing a political entity. So I will either censure myself and not do that research, which is extremely dangerous. It means we are not going to be innovative, we're not going to be exciting, and it means that our students are also going to suffer, because they will not get that learning in the classroom because we've not done the research, or because we are afraid to share it. They will also not do that research because they will be even more frightened that perhaps they will be failed. And we should remember that this current bill gives the president the opportunity, the space to curtail and to intervene and to interfere by creating state of saying that there's an emergency. So imagine that the students, the SRC, go on a demonstration. It is possible for government to interfere and to have the SRC executives
I really would have wished to have Vincent Assafuah have the last word, but we have run out of time. Unfortunately, you joined that a bit too late. But I think that your preliminary views may have been all-encompassing as far as the bill is concerned. It's unfortunate. Thank you very much. My guests have been Professor Akosua-Adumakwam, Professor of African Studies and Acting Dean of International Programs, University of Ghana, Legon, Professor Kwejo Appiagyei-Atua, Associate Professor of Law, University of Ghana, Legon, Professor George K.T. Odro, former Pro-Vice Chancellor and current Dean, School of Educational Development and Outreach, University of Cape Coast, Professor Charles Mafo, who is the President of UTAC, National President. I apologize, we couldn't get back to you also to have your views. Your line was also tripping a couple of times. Samuel Sego is the GRASAC National President, and earlier we spoke to Larry K. Agbado, Editor, Colleges of Education Weekly Journal. And once again, thanks also to Vincent Assafuah, Director of Communications, Ministry of Education. The consensus from the stakeholders, as far as the universities are concerned, on this platform is that this bill has to be jettisoned because they use many adjectives to describe it: retrogressive, unconstitutional, needless, solves nothing. My name is Samson Ladia Yanine. Have a good afternoon.